God bless you. We're glad to have you again with us in our Growing in Grace podcast. We're glad to have Minister Phillip Jackson with us today. And today we're going to talk about the role of the husband in a marriage. We oftentimes talk about marriage, and what we strive to do is have a balanced approach to marriage, wherein in time past it seems to have been a conversation where it was more focused on the role of the wife in a marriage rather than the husband. And today, I believe that we should have more of a balanced approach to marriage because it's the husband and the wife.
Yes.
And so in the marriage, God instituted that he made the man and formed him out of the dust of the ground, and he became a living soul, but he was by himself, and then God made a helpmeet for man.
Yes.
And in doing so, man had some obligations to that wife. Even in the beginning, his charge was to rule. And so in this time, I think we have to put a lot of qualifiers to what rule means. Because I think that some people, they take that way beyond the scope of what God intended for rule to mean.
Yeah.
And some other things in this subject that we can deal with, but we want to really deal with the role of the husband in the marriage. So how would you like to start this conversation?
Yeah, I just, when you're talking about the rule, the husband ruling over the wife, and of course, what comes to mind for me is just Jesus' example to the church, how he is to the church, how he is to us, even as individuals. And, I get and we understand that the church is operating, what I'll say, I use the word perfectly as long as it operates under the authority of God. But we have to think about him and how kind and how gracious he was and how forgiving he was to us as the church. And, in my mind as a husband, we have to follow that example, with our wives, with our children. And the main thing I think for a husband is to be that example of how everybody should be. The wife should be in the relationship. So, for me, I got married when I was, I guess I was 22, I think. I've been married about 32 years. And, what I found out as a husband is that one of the things that happen in relationships, in families where they're dysfunctional, is that the husband, his role is not right. With him, being the foundation of the family from a natural standpoint. First of all, we know that God is the foundation. What you want is you want a husband that loves God and honors God. And then with that, then the wife, she get a husband and, she honor him the same way as the husband honor God. And, and just have that respect for him and love for him. And even though we don't like to say it, obedience, to him. But the husband is going to be a loving and kind individual. For me, with my wife, when I first got married, there's a lot she didn't know. Because she wasn't raised in the true church. And I offered a lot of grace to her. What I find out a lot of times, I think, when people get married in the church is that, the man have this expectation of the wife because, she's been taught she's supposed to do this, she's supposed to do that. And then he get married and find out that's not really what she's going to do. And what I've come to find out is pretty much whether the people are in the church or out of the church, a lot of times they have to grow into, that virtuous woman. That's really taking it all the way to the other end. But it just, it takes time. And also, gaining that respect for the husband, it takes time. If he's doing those things that he should do and being a good leader over time, maybe your wife will call you Lord. That hadn't happened yet.
So, her desires to be to her husband and he's to rule over her. So what does that look like for a husband to be a ruler in a home? What does that look like in a godly way?
In a godly way, what I'll say, the husband is he's the foundation of the family, and what has to happen is so important that his love is correct, because you have his love for God, then you have the wife love for him, then you have the children, and when the husband's love, when it's off, then a lot of times you end up with a dysfunctional home, because everything is built on his love for the wife, and then so on and so forth. So for me, in my own life, being the head of the family is really just being the example, and to just really break it down is really being a servant to the family is really what it's all about. I said that to someone one time, my boss on the job, and I told him, I said, I live a life of servitude, and he was like, what does that mean? I said, all day, all the time, my main concern is making sure the people that I'm responsible for are taken care of. Whatever that is, their emotional needs, physical needs, mental needs, just whatever that is, spiritual needs, all of those things are my responsibility. And, so that is what I see as being a godly leader in the home.
Yeah, well, in fact, the way it is, Jesus described it as the greatest would be the servant of all. So if the man sees himself as being the head and the Lord of the house, then he should be a servant of the house. He should be serving the wife. He should be serving the children. And when we look at Jesus, he was servant to the apostles. He was servant to the people. He served.
Yes.
And in fact, when it came down to wash feet, they didn't wash his feet. He washed their feet.
Yes.
And then Peter thought that, well, you're not going to wash my feet.
Yeah.
Jesus told us that.
Broke it down.
If I don't wash your feet, if I don't wash your feet, you're not going to have no part with me.
Yeah.
And Peter
wash
broke
everything.
He said, well, my hand, my head. Like, excuse me, I apologize. And the thing about it is that the Lord was teaching his disciples that serving is the right. If you're going to lead, you got to serve. And so that's where sometimes husbands may not have the right mindset. That if you're going to lead, you got to serve.
Yes.
And if you want respect, here's one thing about respect is sometimes somebody say, you better respect me. If you got to say that, you're in a bad spot. If you got to say, you better respect me, because when it comes down to respect, can you make somebody respect you?
No. You can't make them do it. They can give you some eye service while you're there. They can do it while you're there looking at them, but really and truly in their heart. Now that's where real respect comes from.
Exactly.
Yeah, it does. But what I think about that is, so that's part of what I was saying was that respect, a lot of times it comes over time.
Yes.
When you show your wife and your family, I'll use it for an example, no matter what comes up, no matter what, you're going to love them. And that's an aspect, even for the wife and even more so for the children. And sometimes it takes time. And when they really come to that conclusion, there is some respect even gained from that. I said to my daughter one time, she was thinking, that I wanted to control her life. This is my oldest daughter. And I had to make her understand that the things that I say and the things that I do is because your life is more important to me than mine. I'm not trying to control your life. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to save it if I can, because the things that you're trying to do right now at this point in time, they're against you. And, when I had made that statement to her about how her life is actually more important than mine, it's just like a light just came on for her. And she began to understand, why am I, texting, want to know where you are, when you're coming home, this, that, and the other. It's not about control. It's about love and wanting you to, be safe and everything. So getting up in the morning, going to work, providing for your family. You gain respect through that. When you do that, when you manage your finances, you gain respect through that. And even I'll say this: you take a husband who is very handy at home. You take my children; they think my dad, he can fix anything. Even that. So over time, as you begin to operate in that leadership role, then that's where you'll see disrespect or start coming, even for the wife. I was blessed when I first got married. My wife, she was 18, and I say that we laugh about it now, and it really is the truth. If I told her that the sky was green, it looked blue, but it's really green, you're going to have a time making her believe that that's not green. Phillip said that thing green is green. I knew that wouldn't last because she was so young, but
and then she turned 19.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So then, but you can actually, you have that time where that changed some, but then over time, then what happens is it kind of reverts back to the original, because over time you prove.
If you prove yourself.
Yes, you prove that I should follow him. I should listen to him. Yeah. I should consider, what he has to say over time.
Right. And that's where respect is earned versus demanded. Because when you got to demand it, like you said, they might do something in front of your face. You can get somebody to fear you to an extent to where they'll do what you say because they have a fear that you might hurt them or harm them, or you're trying to control them. They might do something like that, but you won't have their respect.
That's it.
Because internally they won't respect you.
Right.
And they could come to a position where they loathe you. They'll do what you say out of a fear, but they won't really appreciate you or respect you.
Right.
And you can't make somebody do that. Nobody can make somebody do that. But when you treat people in such a way, in fact, I think that it's a wise thing to treat people in such a way that they'll have a hard time disrespecting you. If you treat your wife a certain way, she'll have a hard time disrespecting you. And that ought to be the aim of a husband, is to treat his wife in such a way to where it'll be hard for her not to respect you.
And I can tell you this: if a woman ever loves a man, I mean really love him, and if a man, so the goal for me in my marriage was, I got to a point in my marriage where, and I'll say this, and it's fine, for about like 10 years or so, I had to put some work in. It was a point in my life where what I said was, no matter what, I'm going to love my wife. It had nothing to do with what she did or what she didn't do.
Yeah.
I just determined that I'm going to love her the way she needs to be loved. And it wasn't a transactional kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now, I'll say this, and this is to anybody that's, if they're looking at this, yes, there are times, even when you're in that position, where you may be tired, you may be frustrated, but what you have to do is you have to get yourself together and you have to get back on your mission. And you have to stick to that. And if you do, I can tell you, if you get a woman to love you through that, and I'll say probably about 10 years in, is when I begin to see that shift. And man, my life is, really I'm spoiled is where I am now. And, through over time, a situation where, people talk about, I heard Bishop Jeffries say this, he said, and I think Pastor Terry even said it, he said, Mother Dean, I think it was, used to talk about, the husband come home and, you give him a bath and you do different things like that. And they was talking about, well, I don't want nobody to give me a bath. I said, I'm not one of them guys, man. I said, if you want to rub my feet, whatever, man. And it's just amazing what can happen when a man really love a woman the way he should. And when I say this, sometimes people think that it means you're soft, you're weak. That's not what I'm saying. You still have to be a man. There are decisions that have to be made. Your wife may not agree with it. You're the head. You listen to what your wife have to say. You consider it. But then at the end of the day, you have to make a decision. And she may not be pleased with it, but over time, like I said, you come to find out that, you know what, he is making good decisions.
Good decision, right.
But through all of that, you just continue to love that woman. You find out what she needs, what makes her happy, what are those things. You learn how to dwell with her. And when you do, man, you can just about get anything you want out of your wife when you get where she loves you like that. When she know no matter what, you're gonna be there. It comes a time that light will come on, and she'll look back. And this is how I envision it with my wife. You know, is looking back and saying, you know what, man, that I should have done better. I'm gonna do better. You know, and even I'll say, even from my point of view, there are things that I didn't do well. I thought I was doing well. And since we're talking about the husband, I need to get to that. We need to be really in tune with our wives. Sometimes wives won't tell you, I don't know why. Lord have mercy. They won't tell you exactly what they want.
You're supposed to know. If you love her. I've experienced it too. I don't know what that is. But I'll even go so far as to say it wasn't even just my wife. I've experienced it from other women that I love.
Right.
Like my mother, my grandmothers
Right.
have put that on me where I was supposed to know something that they didn't tell me. I don't know where that comes from, Mother Sims. Because I think you probably do that too, don't you? You have? Okay. You grown. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's one of them things that it's like you're supposed to know. And I understand where you're coming from. And you can go ahead, but I think you're saying that you need to kind of begin to anticipate the unsaid things or even pull those things out and get her to verbalize, you know, what she's thinking, what she's feeling. Because you know, and one thing about it, we know sometimes when they feeling a certain way.
Yes. Oh, you can.
And you say, what's wrong? They say, nothing. It's like, okay. Okay, we got to figure what this thing is.
Yeah, that's it.
Because it's definitely something.
Yeah, we need
it
to
ain't
have
nothing.
Yeah, it's something. Yeah, you know, and that's part of the some work you have to do in the marriage as a husband. You got to really get sensitive to how that works with your wife. But I'm blessed that, you know, at some point she just got where it's gonna be better if you just tell me. I'm willing to do it. I just need to know what it is.
Right.
And if you let me know, you know, then I'll see what I can do to, you know, to try to accommodate whatever that is. But that makes it so much easier when they do.
Yeah, and the thing, like the Bible says, is this to us. It says, husbands dwell with them according to knowledge.
Yes.
Now, we got to, I think we have to, like you said, be sensitive. We got to be a student. We got to learn her. And so then you got to ask, when you're in school, you ask questions. And, you know, you've got to begin to learn what makes her happy, what makes her upset, and, you know, how she thinks about things, and begin to grow and develop into each other. But to dwell with your wife according to knowledge is two things. We need to know what God said, and then we need to know who we're dealing with.
Correct.
You know, your wife is different from mine, and sometimes I can say something about my wife, but it don't fit your wife. But sometimes overall it does, but not specifically. Like you gave the illustration about how some of the mothers used to say about giving their husband a bath. Well, the thing is, find out what your spouse likes.
That's right.
What do they like?
Correct.
Because the thing is, for you, that worked out for you. You say, yeah, Sister Pat, you heard what that mother said? I want my bath. I want my bath. You know, I got them little sponges. And you got your yeah. But, you know, so that works for you. But for the next man, it may be something else. But
Right.
That spouse needs to be attentive to what that is.
And it's not necessarily a specific thing. It's the concept.
It's the concept.
Like Mother Camp, what she says to the lady, she tells them that you need to find out what your husband like.
Right.
And you need to give that to him. So the way she puts it, then that just that's more of a concept than just some specific thing maybe that she do for Elder Camp. But but that's correct. I think flip it back to the husband. Same thing. What he need to do is he got to find out what is going to make his wife, make her happy. And it does matter. It's a problem if a man got in his mind that that's really not important. It's very important.
That's a big mistake.
It is.
That's a huge mistake.
I am who I am. What I do is what I do, and that's it. That is not the right thing to do at all. If you want to have, if you want the person that you're married to be as happy and fulfilled as they could be, and I say as a husband, you should want that for your wife, and the wife should want that for the husband. So I don't know at any time, we in it until death.
Yeah, yeah.
So what I'm saying is you might as well be all in.
Yeah.
You in anyway, and you can't get out of it. And hopefully you don't want to get out of it.
Yeah. And hopefully it's not a ball and chain.
Oh, man.
Or prison sentence.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be like that.
It doesn't.
It could be so much joy and so much peace. And then I've thought about this, how sometimes people say, you mean to tell me I have to be married to the same person for the rest of my life? And I would say through wisdom, I hope you're not. I hope that the person that you're married to evolves over time and you evolve over time and you're not the same person 30 or 40 or 50 years from now.
Right.
Because that's going to be pretty sad.
Yeah, it is.
But that's the beautiful thing that I've seen, I would say, in my marriage over 28 years in that, well, not over 28, it's going on 28 years, is that we're not the same people. But I understand what people say. I've been married to the same person. I understand that. But there's another side to that that's probably not the same person. In that you've grown and you've evolved over time. And it's like Mother Sims, now she starts to tell her husband things. So hopefully, as a husband, we begin to pull things out of our wives now, and that vital information that we need. Whereas in time past, we used to just let it all fly, let it all ride. And we weren't concerned at first. But now, as we've grown older, we should be more aware. And we should, if we've been a good student, then we ought to be pleasing her better.
We should be.
We should be pleasing her better. And that's the other thing about it, is that really the role of a husband is to please his wife. To please his wife.
Yes.
Now the role of a wife is to please her husband.
Yes.
But I think that you said that in the beginning, you didn't worry as much about being pleased as trying to please.
Yeah.
Is that a true statement?
That's kind of how it was. What happens sometimes, I'll say it this way, and this is just me talking. You have a gardener and you have a flower. In most relationships, that's what you have. Somebody is a gardener, somebody is the flower. When you know what you are, you can't worry about what the other person is. You got to operate in that. So I'm a gardener. And so what my role was to do, so when you're in that role of being a gardener, it may be some things that you need, maybe some things that you want. You talk about it, but if you're not getting it, you still have to tend the garden. And then over time, by doing that, then the flower would become a gardener. And then it's going back and forth versus you always having. I just find out a lot of times, and the reason why I bring that up, because that happens a lot of times in relationships. And what you have to do is you just have to stay encouraged. You have to know that you married a good person. Hopefully you did. You married a good person, and they just don't understand. They just don't get it. And you have to continue to communicate to them what you need, even though you may not be getting it. And I want to flip it back on my side as a husband, because one of the things I will say, and I don't think I have to say it, but I will say it because I don't know who's looking at it. I couldn't have married a better wife. I have a beautiful wife. I am so pleased with her, and life is just is grand. She still can walk in the room, and man, I'm just like, whew, that is, yeah, it's like that. But what it is, it comes through the gospel. It comes through me making a decision to love her no matter what. My children, the love that they have for me now, I can tell you it comes through that. When you love a wife, a mother, a child's mother,
Yes.
and they can see that, man, daddy just, no matter what, he's going to stay right there in that lane, and he's not going to move out of it. And I'm not saying whether it's wrong or right. Like making a decision, I'm just not going to raise my voice. I'm just not going to do it. And a lot of that comes from, my childhood, and I won't even get into my dad and all that stuff. It's just some things that I wasn't going to do. And you just couldn't get me to crack. Now, it was some times I wanted to crack, but I just refused to do that. I was going to have some peace in my home. My children wasn't going to worry about whether me and their mom going to stay together. It's just certain things they just was not going to experience because as a child, the position that I was in. But this communication thing, let me roll back to that. From my perspective, as a husband, this is an error that I made as a husband. It was some things that I was going through physically, health-wise, and I made a decision in my mind that, I'm going to keep it to myself. I'm not going to tell her. Actually, I made a decision how it's going to end if it go this way without letting her know. She knows something is going on, and, she's trying to talk to me about it, but I'm going to save her from it. I don't want them to worry. I'm just doing it. And I'm thinking I'm doing them a favor. And I really think that I'm right, Elder Vic, that this is the right thing for my family. I'm doing right. And, so she's talking to me. And what she did was, over time, she finally found the right words for the light to come on in my head. So what she said to me was, she said, okay, so this is what I'm doing to her. She said, so if I find a lump in my breast, and I'm just going to say, it's there, and it's going to end how it ends. Doesn't make any difference what you think. Man, I did like and it just, it clicked. I'm like, oh, I am so wrong. I'm sorry. Let me tell you what's going on, this, that, and the other, and I began to give the information. But I thought I was right.
Yeah, but here's the thing that sometimes men may not recognize. I think that sometimes men think about the wife belonging to them. But do you think about that you belong to her?
Yes.
And so her body is yours, but your body belongs to her.
Yes.
So how is it you going to keep a secret about her body from her? And I just think sometimes we don't think about it the right way, And one of the things that, my wife did for me was she kept telling me to go to the doctor to get checked out, and this is where sometimes we got to recognize that there are times when you got to actually listen to your wife.
Yes.
And Abraham at one time where Sarah told him about Ishmael, said, he's not going to be heir with my son. You got to put Hagar and Ishmael out. Abraham was like, that's my son. That's my son too. But you know what God told Abraham? Hearken to the voice of your wife. And I just bring that up to say that sometimes as a husband, your wife be right about stuff.
Oh, no doubt
and sometimes as a man, sometimes he'll discount what his wife is saying, and really you shouldn't do that.
Yeah. I tell anybody, if you got a good wife and my wife got some skills, she got some things that She's gifted. One of the things that she can do, I'm a very trusting person. I learned really quickly that she can discern that this person is not who they say they are. And, and over time, it didn't take a long time either. I come to realize what I need to do is when she say that, don't just like it doesn't matter. You need to guard yourself because over time it's been proven that she's right about that stuff. And just other talents and things that she have, and I have enough understanding to use those. And I'll say this to any husband. You should hold your wife's opinion about things, if you got a good wife, in high regards before you make a decision about what's going on. To not do that is foolish.
Yes.
And it might make it harder for you to get that respect you want. You'd be messing up, So, a husband should do. I think a good husband will do that.
Yeah.
He will consider what his wife has to say.
Yeah. So it's wonderful. I would like to look at a scripture, and it says in 1 Corinthians 7 and 32, it says, "But I would have you without carefulness. He that is unmarried cared for the things that belong to the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But he that is married care for the things that are of the world, how he may please his wife." And how he may please his wife. And sometimes we can get so focused on pleasing the Lord, but if you got a wife, you got to figure out how to please your wife.
You
too.
talking about it? Yes, sir.
You got, and so I wanted to read this because I don't want people to dismiss what I said and how that a man is actually supposed to please his wife. And the scripture says, because I don't want people to think, well, Pastor Jeffries is just talking. The scripture says in 1 Corinthians 7 and 33, "But he that is married cared for the things that are of the world, how he may please his wife." And I'll say this, that before I got married, I told my wife that I was going to be a minister. And I told her that while we were dating. I knew because, my pastor had told me. And I just believed him. And so I told her that that's who I was going to be. And before we got married, I had a vision or a thought in my head that I could perhaps go to different cities and towns and minister to different places and different people, and I can get me like maybe like an RV or something like that, have my house with some wheels on there, so I can just go different places. Well, when I got married, come to find out my wife wanted a foundation. She wanted an actual house that was stable, and she wanted to be situated somewhere. And so what she wanted was different from what I had in my head. And I saw that it was good to listen to her to find out, what she liked, and I began to try to provide that for her. But what, I would say this. In doing that, I found out that my wife brought something to me that was real good. There's a lot of things I didn't care about. But through her, I began to care about some things that she cared about. And I appreciate that because it brought a value to my life that I wouldn't otherwise have. Because some things I just didn't care about. But through her, I began to care about it for her sake. And then I began to see like what she would do for my house and how she would beautify my home. I didn't care about it at first, but after she get through beautifying, I was like, wow, I want to come home. She made it a home that that was welcoming and inviting, and that I wanted to be a part of. That, and when I got off work, I just couldn't see myself. Even though sometimes I had to go other places, I didn't want to go. I wanted to go home because of what she made it. And I can just say that my job was to please her. And you have to think about some things and care about some things of this world, because a wife is going to care about some things of this world, like a nice home, like certain things.
Yes.
Can you speak to that?
Oh, yes, definitely, because I think for a lot of men, that is in the beginning. You're so focused on whatever that is you think a man's supposed to be or what he's supposed to do. So with me, it was about working, making money, and pretty much my main focus. Those were the things in church, and then I just didn't think about a whole lot of anything else. Really, for me and my family, it kind of developed into what it is because that's what she wanted. To be honest with you, whenever we moved, it was because she was ready to move. Because I just really didn't think about that. And the thing about it is, whatever would make her happy, then that's what I was willing to do. And I think one of the things too that I missed, and I talked to my son-in-law about this a lot, my boys, is, my wife did a lot of raising the children because I didn't understand like I understand now that was really my responsibility, and she was supposed to help me.
Right.
I spent more time focusing on working, making money, providing, look at all this stuff that I was able for y'all to get, and you feel like you are successful.
Yes.
But you have to have a balance in your life between your wife, your children, church, and whatever your other responsibilities, your job, and you got to balance all of that out. You can't be so focused in one area,
right?
Because what I always say, if you choose to do one thing, you choose not to do something else.
Right.
And as husbands, if we're going to be good leaders in the home, we have to have time for our children.
Right.
I was home. I remember two things, and I say this because hopefully it'll bless somebody else. They asked one of my children, they had to draw, what is your father's hobby? What does he do? And guess what picture they drew? It wasn't working because they didn't see me work.
They saw you sleep?
That's all they saw me do, was sleep.
Yeah.
I would work all night, get off work half the day. When I come home, I got 3-4 hours or so to sleep, and then I go. One of the sad things that I heard too later on was, some of my nephews and nieces was talking to my children about, I'm just kind of paraphrasing, how blessed they are to have a father in the home. Do you know what my oldest child said? I think it was Natasha. She was like, he don't play with us because I'm so focused on providing for them. And some of that, and I'll say this too, how we can bring our childhood into our marriage because of what we dealt with. We're going to make sure that our children don't have to deal with it, but then you leave all this other stuff out and you create some other stuff that they may have to deal with.
Exactly. So you got to bring that balance in there. In fact, one of the things I would say, is we think of our main job as being the provider, but we've got to provide more than stuff.
Yes.
And part of the reason why we got married was we wanted each other, which means that we've got to give time. I remember our former pastor saying that really the woman that you marry, before you married them, they had a house. Some of them had a car. Some of them had food already. And then because we provide those things, we think that's it. We're a good husband because we're bringing food home and we got a roof over their head and they got a car to ride in. But in reality, she actually married you. She had those things before she married you. But when she married you, it was supposed to be for you. And you were supposed to be marrying her for who she was, which means that you have to give each other time. In fact, that's one of the love languages of some people is that quality time. Like you can give them all the stuff in the world, but if you don't spend no time with them, they'll feel like you don't love them.
That's it. Yeah, you can miss that. And I was one of the ones who missed it. I focused on working all the time. And you know how I was talking about you supposed to read their mind. And there was a time where my wife, she was sick of that. Was that, basically before she literally told me this, I'm saying this is what was in her mind because this is what she told me. She said, I didn't marry you to be by myself all the time, with children all the time. And I thank God so much that I'm not one of these people, you got to beat me over the head. You just tell me and let me think through it. And I'm like, you got to do something different. This is not going to work. And so, you have to create some time for one another, like you said. Find out, whether it's going out on a date or, really, to be honest with you, like my wife, if I'm at home, just being in the house, it matters to her.
Right.
But I'm like, you're not in the room, doesn't matter. You're in the house. And I thought that was so weird until she left and was gone for about 2 weeks, man. And I'm like, no, this is not working.
I realized she was in that other room.
Yes. We don't look at the same shows and stuff like that. I look at nature shows all the time, and it's just amazing how we sync, but we really kind of like, it's just different things that we like. But man, I just want her to be in the house. I come home, if she's not there, I'm looking around. I want to know where y'all mom at. You just want her to be home. But and I'm glad I'm in that space, because it could be another way.
Yeah.
But I tell anybody this. For me, I know for a fact that it is the teaching that we receive here in the True Church of God in Christ. What God has established for the husband and the wife, if you operate in that, man, you can have a beautiful home. You can just have peace. You can have joy in your home. You can create a situation where your wife will respect you, will yield to your decision, versus, you having to fight and pull all the time. But you just have to find out the course you're supposed to be on, and you just got to stay on it. Like I say, regardless to what the other person does, you have to continue to love them the way God would have you to love them, whether it's the husband or wife. And that's just a decision that I made. And I can tell you right now, I'm reaping benefits from that. That I really am.
Yeah. And, there are times when, like you said, it may be an imbalance at times. And when we think about the relationship that God had with us, there was a big imbalance.
Yes.
And I just wanted to say that to encourage somebody who may be dealing with an imbalance.
Yes.
There may be an imbalance where you're not getting what you feel like you need or what you feel like you even deserve. You might feel like you deserve a certain thing.
Right.
But I think about Christ and how there was this big imbalance, and he gave himself for us.
Gave himself.
When we weren't giving ourselves to him, we weren't presenting ourselves to him.
No.
We weren't living for him.
No.
In fact, the way that we were living, we were like enemies to him, actually.
Yeah.
But he still gave himself for us.
Yes.
And like one scripture says, he first loved us. But think about how much we love him today. But it's because he first loved us.
Yes, that's it.
And I think that sometimes we need to think about, maybe, not to say that the spouse don't love you, but maybe you feel like she ain't, or he, or whoever, they're not loving you like you want to be loved. You be first.
Yes.
Just be first.
That's it.
Just be first. Just put yourself out there. Don't be scared. Don't be scared. Just go ahead. And just believe that one day it'll come back.
Yes.
Then one day it'll come back.
And I think as the husband, as the head, I'm always stick to that. I think the husband should be the one to do that. He should be the one to do it. If if your wife is not where you want her to be or where you think she need to be, you just got to continue to love her and believe that I just believe what you sow. I believe that'll come up. If you married, if you considered who you married before you married them, and they hit these certain marks, that they will become what you need them to be.
Well, and then I'll put it another way. Like you might say, well, like your wife, if a man or husband think that his wife is not, maybe what he desires at the time, completely. I would say maybe the marriage is not what you desire to be. but that marriage includes your role in it.
Yes.
And sometimes a husband, excuse me, is looking at his wife when he actually needs to look in the mirror.
Yes.
Sometimes he's looking at his wife for what she's doing or not doing. And sometimes what you need to look in the mirror to see the cause and effect, why she's doing or not doing a certain thing. Because I can testify that in the beginning, in the early part of my marriage, that we had some struggles. But some of that struggle was not because of my wife. Some of that struggle was because of the way I was dealing with my wife. And what was happening was true and real. And, you know, the treatment was true and real that was coming to me that I didn't like. That was real. But once I examined the situation, a lot of that was because of me and because of what I was doing. When I changed that, the whole thing changed.
Yes.
And really, sometimes you can get so focused on the other person until you forget that the marriage got two people in it. And you say, well, my marriage is my marriage that, but it's got two people in it.
What
Are you doing?
Yes.
What are you doing? And we can get so focused, he ain't doing that or she ain't doing this. And it's pointing, and then you just forgetting, what are you doing? What? And even if she is doing that, what are you doing to counter it? What are you doing to change it? Like it's rail for rail. Are you railing for railing? Or are you countering something that may be coming at you in a bad way? Are you countering that with something good? And changing it and turning it around and bringing things to a better.
Yes. And
are you trying to best each other? Or are you trying to worse each other? What are you doing?
Yeah, I think the thing is, what we got to do is we just got to do what we know is the right thing to do, regardless of what the other person is doing. And I know that is a very mature statement.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was told when I was young that I had an old spirit. And I just looked at Bishop Jeffries and how I dealt with Mother Jeffries, and that's just kind of how I patterned my role in my marriage. You can almost take his marriage probably, or my marriage, and kind of sit it in his based on what I think I know about how their marriage was. And, you know, it worked for him, and I just felt like, you know, it would work for me. There are times when, you know, Mother Jeffries did some stuff that he didn't agree with, but I'm going to tell you what he told me. He said, man, he was talking about how Mother Jeffries blessed him, man. Them decisions she made, man, she did the right thing. He was blessed through that stuff. Sometimes we, you know, as men, it's some things that we may not see. And I say, even for me in my relationship, I know that I don't know everything. And my wife has a mind, she has a good understanding, and, you know, in order to be a good leader, you got to listen to the people around you. And when you begin to make these decisions or whatever you're going to do. But, you know, I just go back to it. I think the main thing is just making sure you love one another, regardless. That husband be the number one person to show love in that family.
Yeah. And the Bible says, Ephesians 5, very popular, 5:25 says, husbands, love your wives.
Yes.
Even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, that he might present it to himself, a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. For no man ever yet hated his own flesh. I'll put a little something in there. If he got a decent mind.
Yeah.
But nourisheth and cherisheth it, even as the Lord the church. For we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. This is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. Nevertheless, let every one of you in particular See, and I notice it's talking to the man. Let every one of you in particular so love his wife, even as himself. And then it does say something to the wife. I'm gonna leave that part off.
Yeah, we don't have to go. And the thing about it is what I believe, and I without even altogether knowing it, and kind of knowing it, I believed that definitely after I got saved, that whole experience of getting saved, one of the main things was his love for me. Even in my rejection, even when I'll say didn't even believe he was real, so to speak, and yet and still I look back at my life and I can see how his love was still there in my life. And I think for a husband, that's what we do. We love our wives regardless. And what you do, you'll find now over time that situation will turn around for you. I tell anybody, if love won't fix it, I don't have the answer for you.
Yeah.
Because I believe that's what it'll take to fix the problem.
And I can testify, as we get ready to wrap today, I can testify that love has been a blessing in my home. Where it started out one way, love changed it and turned it around.
Yes.
And now we have a blessed home.
Yes.
And you can have a blessed home too, but it doesn't start with the wife necessarily. It's supposed to start with the head,
Yes.
which is the husband. For the husband is the head of the wife. And we can go to another round of this, but we're going to have to cut it for now. And we hope that you come back and hear what we have to say next time. God bless you. May heaven smile upon you. Thank you for your time.
God bless you.
Bless you.